Welcome to our YouTube channel, All America Selections Flowers and Vegetables. Today I'm going to go over the key points, the tips that will allow you to grow large radishes. Radishes seem simple, but they can be challenging. We can grow them in flower boxes. This is a 2015 All America Selections winner, the Roxanne Radish. I highly recommend it for your gardens. You can see how well it grows. And I want to just really point out, you can grow them in a flower box. We're going to go over that. We're going to plant some new radishes. One of the keys is spacing. These are larger radishes, so you want to space them at about 2 inches apart, and you can see how large they get. Where one seed dropped next to one I already harvested, it didn't grow. So you don't want to overcrowd your radishes. But let me just take these out right now. Look at the size of these radishes. Grown in a flower box. I'm going to eat these tonight. I'm going to take you out into the garden, show you some that are growing in the ground, and we'll go over the whole way to plant your radishes in a box, in the ground, and go over what really gives you the best opportunity to have large radishes. If you see your radishes cracking when you're growing them, just like that in a flower box, because it's harder to keep the moisture even, as you're adding in a lot of water, sometimes your radishes are going to crack. That's perfectly normal. But overall, these are just beautiful radishes. All right, let's go out to the garden. So here are some ground planted radishes, and again, you want to drop the seeds about 2 inches apart to 4 inches apart. Give them space. You want nice loose soil so that the radish develops nicely. And I also really recommend when you're planting in the ground, don't add any fertilizer into the ground. Radishes don't like a lot of nitrogen. If you give them a lot of nitrogen, they're going to grow a great set of leaves, but they're not going to bulb up for you. And there's plenty of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in your ground. You don't need to really add to it. What I do is once the seeds get dropped in, water them regularly every 2 days till they get established and are growing, and then I give them a water-soluble fertilizer one time. I'll talk about that shortly. But for the setup, 2 inches apart, and in about 30 to 45 days from germination, you're just going to get beautiful large radishes. Different sizes. The Roxanne, look at that. The Roxanne is a great radish to grow. These hold up really nicely to the heat. These are a little bit beat up because in September we are still getting 85, 90 degree days. Now, another tip is when you're planting in the ground, your plants can be a little more susceptible to diseases, to insects. Right in here I have crazy okra growing, which is over sort of shadowing the radishes. I had to move this over this way because it just kind of bent over the radishes, casting shade in. So you want your radishes to get at least 6 hours of straight sun. No fertilizer, a little bit of compost is fine. Keep the nitrogen low. Alright, so I'm going to harvest these. We'll plant into here, show you how I do that, and then we'll plant into the containers. So the whole key again, nice loose soil. This goes down to about 4 inches. Nice and loose so the radish will develop. Spacing, the holes should be 2 to 4 inches apart. And then we're just dropping 2 seeds into each hole. And I go all the way down that way and come back. So I have 4 rows, 2 seeds per hole. The smaller radishes that are over there, that's everything I harvested, sat a little bit too far here into the shade. So I'm just going to do 4 rows here. And then you just cover them up. You want to go down 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. It really doesn't matter so much the depth, but you want the soil to be loose. We're going to water this in one time with a very low water-soluble fertilizer. We're going to leave them alone. And then you're going to water probably every couple of days. You want to keep this nice and moist while they're germinating, while the root's getting established. And once they come up, and they're maybe this tall, both seeds come up, you're going to thin them down to 1. After the leaves are up, they're established, you can water every 4 or 5 days. Low, steady water in the ground really helps them form just like that without cracking. Okay, let's go over to the flower box. So we're back to the flower box. You want it to be about 4 inches in depth. You just want the root to be able to go down, and you mostly want this to be able to hold moisture. You could actually grow them in something more shallow, but you really would have to manage the moisture, and that's hard to do. So you're going to loosen the soil all the way down to the bottom, break up all the roots, and in this case, this time I'm doing 2 holes. Last time I just did 1 down the middle, and that's for really growing oversized radishes. You don't have to do that. But in a box this size, Maximum would be 2 rows, so you got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 radishes growing in here. Now, because this is not in the earth, you could get, these are the radishes of course, but about a tablespoon at most of any organic granular fertilizer, something, you know, below a 555 NP and K, or at least low nitrogen. And you could just sprinkle this across the top, work it in a couple of inches, and that would be fine. A lot of times when you buy mixes from the store for your containers, for your flower boxes, they already have fertilizer in there. In that case, I wouldn't add any more. You don't want to grow leaves, you want to grow the radishes. So again, about 1/2 inch deep, and you just drop in 2 radishes per hole, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, it doesn't matter as long as it's loose. And you would again want to water this regularly, keep it moist while they're germinating. When both seeds come up, they both have nice sets of leaves, like I was saying about that size, thin them down to 1. So we're going to give this a drink of water-soluble organic fertilizer one time for the flower box, and maybe a second time. If the leaves are looking a little bit yellow at mid-growth, maybe you give them a little more in the flower box. We're going to do it one time in the earth bed. I'll show you how we do that. In about 30 to 45 days from germination, you're going to have radishes in your flower box, and you're going to have them out in your garden. All right, let me get to the water-soluble fertilizer. So a water-soluble fertilizer means that it's immediately available to your plant. It'll be able to use the NP and K right away. A lot of times when you buy organic fertilizers, it's based on basically 1 tablespoon per 1 gallon of water. This is a 2-gallon container. Let's say, for instance, the fertilizer has a 666 rating. 6 nitrogen, 6 phosphorus, 6 potassium. That's really too high for radishes. You want it to be below a 555. Even a 111 is fine. Just a low, steady NP and K. So if you put 1 tablespoon in here, since you're really putting 1 tablespoon in 2 gallons, you divide that 666 by 2, and now you have a 333 NP and K, and that's perfectly fine. And we're going to water this in just like that. No need to over soak it, and I'd go all the way down the flower box. That's the first feeding. After it's growing for a while, maybe we do a second feeding, and just, you know, use your eyes. If the leaves look a little bit yellow, you're going to need to do this more often than one time, but typically radishes do well with a low fertilizer. All right, let's go feed the ground radishes. Just soak in the ground radishes nicely. You're only going to have to do it one time. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We don't run any ads. We just provide great garden videos to help you in your garden. And if you subscribe, I'll show you the harvest and care of these radishes. Thanks for watching.